Are you ready to capitalize on the booming demand for housing? High-density housing can be your ticket to maximizing profits and minimizing risk in today's competitive market. In this video, I'll show you how to turn your land into a high-yield development. By the end of this video, you'll have an insider knowledge on land use strategies and zoning laws that dramatically increase your project's profitability and streamline your development process. I know exactly where you are right now because I've been there. And more importantly, I talk to builders in your exact situation every single week. You've got 3, maybe 4 projects going on, and instead of feeling successful, you feel like you're drowning. Your own money is tied up in these builds. You're constantly worried about cash flow. And at the end of the day, after paying all of your subs, all of your materials, all of your overhead, there's barely anything left for you. And here's the kicker. You look around and you see other builders who seem to have it all figured out. They're building more homes, making more money, and somehow they don't look like they're about to have a heart attack from stress. So what's the difference? The difference is they've figured out how to build smarter, not harder. And one of the biggest game changers is understanding high-density housing development. Now, when I say high density, I'm not talking about cramming a bunch of tiny houses onto a lot. I'm talking about strategic land use that maximizes your profit per square foot while giving you multiple revenue streams from a single project. Let me give you a real example from one of my students. He came to me feeling completely burnt out. He'd been building single-family homes for years, using his own money and barely making ends meet. Sound familiar? Within 6 months of implementing what I'm about to teach you, he had his first high-density project underway. Instead of building one $300,000 house on a lot, he was building 4 attached units and each sold for $270,000. Same lot, but instead of 1 revenue stream, he had 4. Instead of $300,000 in revenue, he had almost $1.1 million in revenue. But here's the beautiful part. Because he understood the zoning laws and land use strategies I taught him, his cost per unit actually went down. He was able to leverage other people's money instead of his own, and he finished the project in the same time it would have taken him to build 2 single-family homes. That's the power of high-density housing when you know what you're doing. All right, let's break down what high-density housing really means and why it's such a game changer for builders who want to scale without burning out. High-density housing is basically maximizing the number of living units you can put on one piece of land while still creating something people actually want to live in. But here's where most builders go wrong. They think it's just about cramming more units together. That's not at all. The real secret is understanding that high-density housing is about creating community and maximizing land efficiency. When you do this right, you're not just building homes, you're creating a lifestyle that people are willing to pay premium prices for. Let me walk you through the 4 main types of high-density housing that we're working on right now. First, attached single-family homes. Instead of 1 house on a lot, you're building 2 or more attached units, each on their own parcel. The key here is to each have their own deed, their own land, their own everything. They're not condos, they're individual homes that just happen to share a wall. Why does this work so well? Because you get the efficiency of shared walls and systems, but buyers get the psychological benefit of owning their own land. Plus, from a financial perspective, it's much easier for buyers to get conventional mortgages. Second, townhomes and row houses. Similar concept, but you can typically fit more units. The key is designing them so they don't feel cramped or cheap. Good design, quality materials, and smart layouts make these premium products. Small lot, single family. This is taking a traditional subdivision approach, but with smaller lots and more efficient home designs. Instead of half-acre lots, you're working with quarter-acre or even smaller lots. But these homes are designed to feel spacious and private. I know some of you are thinking, this sounds great, Terry, but how do I actually run these numbers for my market? That's exactly what this free calculator is for. It's going to walk you through the entire process step by step with the exact formulas I use. Seriously, grab it now. The link is in the description. Fourth, mixed use development. This is the holy grail if you can pull it off. You're combining residential units with commercial or retail spaces. Think live-work units or apartments above retail. This gives you multiple revenue streams and can significantly increase your land's value. Now here's the thing that most builders miss. The success of high-density projects isn't just about the building. It's about understanding your local market and what people actually want. In my area, for example, we have a lot of young professionals who want to live close to downtown, but they can't afford an $800,000 single-family home. They're perfect for high-quality attached homes in a $500,000 to $550,000 range. But in some areas, it might be empty nesters who want to downsize but don't want to compromise on quality. Or it might be families who want affordable homeownership but still want a yard for their kids. The point is, you need to understand your market first, then design your high-density solution around what they actually want, not just what you think will be the cheapest to build. Now let's talk about the part that can make or break your high-density project: land acquisition and evaluation. This is where I see most builders make a fortune or lose their shirts. And the difference usually comes down to understanding what to look for before you buy. First thing you need to understand, not all land is suitable for high-density housing. I don't care how good the price is, if the land won't support your vision, you'll end up with a very expensive lesson in frustration. Let me walk you through the 5-step land evaluation process. This is the same process I use, in the same process I teach in the Home Building Blueprint program. Before I even step foot on a piece of land, I'm pulling the tax records. I want to know the current zoning, I want to see the GIS maps, and I want to understand any easements or restrictions. Here's a pro tip that could save you thousands. Always check for utility easements. I've seen builders buy land thinking they could put 4 units on it, only to figure out that there's a 30-foot utility easement running right through the middle. This is where most builders get intimidated, but it doesn't have to be complicated. Every area has what's called a UDO, Unified Development Ordinance. This document tells you exactly what you can and cannot do on any piece of land. The key things I'm looking for: maximum density allowed, setback requirements, height restrictions, parking requirements, any special overlay districts. Here's the thing though, don't just look at what the zoning allows today. Look at what the comprehensive plan says about future development in that area. If this area is planned for higher density in the future, that land becomes much more valuable. Can the existing infrastructure support what you want to build? I'm talking about water, sewer, electricity, and gas. If you have to run new infrastructure, that can eat up your profits real quick. But here's where it gets interesting. Sometimes infrastructure limitations can actually work in your favor. If you're one of the few builders in the area who understands how to work around infrastructure constraints, you can get land at a discount that other builders won't touch. What are similar high-density projects selling for in your area? This isn't just about looking at a sales price. You need to understand the absorption rates, how long units are sitting on the market, and what features buyers are actually paying for. I use a formula that looks at price per square foot for comparable high-density housing, then factors in additional value in land ownership versus condo ownership. This is where that calculator I mentioned earlier becomes crucial. You need to know your maximum land cost before you make an offer. Here's my basic formula. You need to first come up with what your sales price is going to be or the appraised value of the home you plan to build. The maximum land cost will be 20% of what that sales price is, minus any kind of horizontal construction costs. So if you have to tear down, bring in water and sewer, any kind of grading, whatever the lot improvements are going to be before you start to go vertical, those costs need to be subtracted from that total amount. And that's what your maximum land cost can be. But here's the key. Always include a buffer. I typically use at least a 10% buffer for unexpected costs because there's always unexpected costs. Let me give you a real life example. I recently looked at a lot that was zoned for a single family residential. The asking price was $100,000, and most builders were planning to build one $650,000 house on it. But when I dug into the zoning, I found that attached single family homes were allowed by right. Same lot, but I could build two attached homes, each selling for $550,000. Suddenly, instead of $650,000 in revenue, I had increased to $1.1 million in revenue. My construction costs went up, but not proportionally. My land costs stayed the same, my profit more than doubled. That's the power of understanding land strategy. All right, now let's talk about the part that keeps most builders up at night, financing these projects. Because here is the reality. If you're financing high density housing the same way you're financing single family homes, you're doing it wrong. And you're probably tying up way more of your own money than you need to. The beautiful thing about high density housing, when you structure it right, is that it's actually less riskier than traditional single family building. Let me explain why. With a single family home, you have one buyer, one closing, one revenue event. If the buyer falls through, or if the market shifts before you can sell, you're stuck with an entire project. With high density housing, you have multiple revenue events. If one buyer falls through, you still have 3 other units generating income. If the market softens, you can adjust pricing on unsold units without taking a total loss. But here's where most builders mess up the financing. They try to finance the entire project like one big construction loan, then convert it to a permanent financing at the end. That approach eats up your credit lines and ties up your cash. Here's what I do instead, and what I teach my students. I use private money for land acquisition. Not banks, private investors who understand real estate. These are people who have money sitting in CDs or savings accounts earning 1 to 2%, and I can offer them 10 to 12% secured by real estate. The key is to structure this so that you can pay them back quickly, either from pre-sales or from permanent financing when the first units close. Instead of one big construction loan, I get individual construction to permanent loans for each unit. Most banks will do this if you have pre-sales or if you have a good relationship with them. Why is this better? Because each unit converts into permanent financing as soon as it closes. That frees up your construction credit line immediately instead of waiting for the entire project to be complete. Here's the secret sauce. If you structure this right, you can have positive cash flow from day one. Let me walk you through a real life example. I have a 4-unit attached home project. I pre-sell 2 units before I even broke ground. Those pre-sales gave me earnest money that I could use for construction costs. Plus, I had guaranteed buyers at closing. The other 2 units I built spec. Because I had 2 pre-sales, my construction lender was comfortable with the project and I can get better terms. By the time I finished construction, I had 2 units closing immediately, which paid off most of the construction costs. The other 2 units gave me pure profit when they sold. Now let's talk about managing risk, because high density housing does have some unique risks you need to understand. Market risk. What happens if the market shifts while you're building? This is why I never start building a high density project without having at least 50% pre-sold. If I can't get 50% pre-sold, this tells me the market isn't ready for what I'm building. What happens if zoning laws change in mid-project? This is why I always get my permits locked in before I close on the land. Once you have approved permits, you're typically grandfathered in even if zoning changes. What happens if costs overrun? This is why I always build at least a 10% buffer on high density projects. There are more moving parts, more coordination required, and more potential for things to go wrong. What happens if I can't get permanent financing for buyers? This is why I only build in areas where I know financing is readily available and why I have relationships with multiple lenders. The key to managing all of these risks is preparations and systems. You need processes in place before you start building, not after problems arise. All right, so you're probably thinking, Terry, this all sounds great, but how do I actually get started? I'm already overwhelmed with my current projects. Here's the thing, you don't have to completely overhaul your business overnight. The builders who are most successful with high density housing are the ones who approach it strategically and systematically. Start small and learn. Your first high density project shouldn't be a 20 unit development. Start with something manageable, maybe 2 or 3 attached units. Learn the process, understand the challenges, build relationships with the right professionals. I always tell my community, it's better to do one small project really well than try to do a massive project and mess it up. Build your team. High density housing requires a slightly different team than single family construction. You need an architect who understands efficient layouts. You need a surveyor who can handle lot splits. And you need a lawyer who understands PUD development. Start building relationships now, even if you're not ready to start your first project. Study your market. Drive around the area and look into high density housing that's being built or has been built recently. What's working? What's not working? What price points are successful? Talk to real estate agents who sell these properties. What are buyers looking for? What features are people willing to pay extra for? Get pre-qualified for financing. Before you start looking for land, have conversations with lenders about what they require for high density projects. Every lender is different, and you want to know their requirements before you need money. Here's what I recommend for the next 90 days. Days 1 through 30, education and market research. Study your local zoning laws, identify potential areas for high density development, and start building relationships with the right professionals. Days 31 through 60, financial preparation. Get pre-qualified with lenders, start building relationships with potential private money sources. Create your project budget and financing strategy. Days 61 through 90, land search and analysis. Start actively looking for suitable land. Run the numbers on potential deals, maybe even make some offers. The goal isn't to have a project under construction in 90 days. The goal is to have a clear plan and be ready to move when the right opportunity comes along. And here's the most important thing. Don't try to figure all this out by yourself. The builders who are most successful are the ones who learn from people who have already done what they want to do, which is why I want to invite you to set up a free strategy call with us. Click the link in the description to set up a call, and let's see how I can help you implement these strategies in your business. Look, if you're ready to finally break free from the burnout cycle and start building a business that works for you instead of against you, don't let this video be just another piece of content you consume and forget. And if you find this helpful, make sure you hit the subscribe button and that notification bell so you don't miss what video I drop next week. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video. Until then, keep building your success.